How's it going?
Good. So, how do I say your name?
Shay.
Jay? Okay.
Shay, yeah. And yours?
It's Darshan.
Darshan. Nice to
Yeah.
meet you. Where are you
Nice to
from?
meet you. Um, my mind processes that question in an interesting way, but this body was born in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm from Canada, up north. So,
Nice.
what does this body do? What are you here for?
Um, Currently what I'm doing is like hypnotherapy and neuro-linguistic programming, coaching
Okay.
like this, helping people break through obstacles. I had studied all kinds of different alternative healing arts, holistic healing arts, and all these kinds of things, even going back to elementary school. In elementary school, my father had a girlfriend who had been through all these kinds of trainings. And so she influenced me at a really early age and had talked about her experiences with like astral travel, out of body travel, and stuff like this. And I became fascinated with that from childhood because I thought, that was a really fascinating concept that you could just get up and fly around and visit places and all this. So I started reading. I did a lot of reading when I was young too. So I started reading already, like astral projection books, out of body journeys, and all this far journeys, and started practicing breathing techniques and affirmations and visualizations and this kind of thing.
Okay.
And then after that, I got really into like earth-based magic, shamanism, and stuff like this, especially getting into like my teenage years. I read all the Don Juan books, the Carlos Castaneda books into like my early 20s and stuff. Those were like my main practices, the things that are in the Carlos Castaneda books and Don Miguel Ruiz, like the Toltec teachings.
Okay.
Yeah. And then eventually this had led me into India, so I got real into the stuff from India, the sciences from India, the yoga pathways and things like this,
Okay.
which then again, when I was back in the United States, I'd always been fascinated with the shamanic pathway. So I spent like a year going really deep with medicine work, ayahuasca ceremonies. I did like 50 to 60
Oh
ayahuasca
wow.
ceremonies in a year.
In a
Yeah,
year. Wow.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. I was doing them at least, 2 or 3 days a month, but frequently multiple weekends in a month because I was just connected with all these different circles. So I just had all these opportunities.
Is there a
And
tolerance when you do it that close together?
the thing with ayahuasca is that it actually seems to increase your sensitivity because it teaches your brain and opens up these psychic spaces, especially if it's done in conjunction with these other spiritual practices and some other kind of discipline that really allows that to integrate into life, then it
Okay.
actually seems to build. And especially if you do like ceremonies back to back like that, you can become more sensitive to the medicine where it's like you need less and less,
Okay.
actually. Yeah.
Cool.
And so yeah, I did that for a while before then I started to feel comfortable to be able to pour my own medicine and things like this. So I would do ceremonies just on my own with other friends that had been through a lot of those ceremonies with me.
Okay. Cool.
So also even we had taken some medicine with us to India and had integrated that as part of our practices while we were in India. And then yeah, hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming and all these things just create like the perfect bridge for me between these kind of really high mystical pathways, like what were in the writings of ancient India and also are left in the indigenous cultures, like the medicine pathway from Peru and the Amazon and things like this. It's like the closest, in my own experience and opinion, because everyone has their own things that are going to be deeply meaningful and connect them to what is really like the purpose of their life and that feeling of the super intelligence of life, the imprint of nature. But for me, yeah, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming, the understanding of this communication and how we can enter into altered states, and it's just even a normal function of our daily awareness that people just aren't necessarily aware of how we enter in and out of these altered states. But these studies then give us this closest map or bridge between these highest mystical levels of the mind and where we are in our modern day. So then, like it, for example, with all the different kinds of spiritual practices and things that I have done over my life, it seemed at some points like there gets to be a divide between the two extremes of, like, say, for example, with ayahuasca ceremonies and medicine ceremonies with people. Uh, People will have a tendency of going really high and having these really high experiences, but then they feel like they just come down and they have difficulty integrating that in life. And there can even be this extreme where then they feel more depressed or more anxious or whatever because now they feel stuck like back in this normal material world, and there's this other like spiritual world that they're longing for or whatever.
Right.
But the reality is that these are just different aspects of life. It all fits together. So the more that we're able to actually integrate it in life is really important. So that's part of the services I also offer with hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming. And it is one of the topics that I want to talk about more and get people to understand that as far as if they are doing psychedelic therapy or psychedelic integration or anything like this, that it would be really good for them to study these other models because they give us an understanding of navigating through altered states of consciousness even without the medicines, which gives us then like a whole groundwork and model for psychedelic integration, even because we can um, basically enter into that same psychic territory and then pace it into the future. We can re-examine it and we can see how it actually integrates into life.
Okay. So you're an integration coach of sorts, in a way?
So yeah, it's something that I do. Mainly I practice hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming for like basic issues that people have like anxiety, depression, or even like I do pain control management just and stop smoking sessions, just all these kinds of hypnosis kinds of things.
Okay.
But one of the services I offer is psychedelic integration and psychedelic preparation because of my experience with the medicine pathway and also having the training and all these other kinds of healing works and models. Then it gives me the ability to really assist people in that kind of work, which I
Okay.
haven't even necessarily had. Like I haven't gone and taken a psychedelic integration certification course or something like this. I've looked at some of them, but
Hmm.
the training that I've already received, or just having the direct experience with the medicine. That's another thing that's really important, that people that are doing like psychedelic guidance work or integration work or think that they would like to, is that they should have some experience with the medicine naturally, because I mean, it's getting to be a thing where as it's coming out more in the mainstream and it's getting more open, and all these people are talking about legalizing, psilocybin for clinical use and all this stuff like this, then it is coming out in like clinical psychology and stuff like this. So a lot of psychologists will then go and do psychedelic integration trainings or whatever, but they have no experience with the medicine. So they basically have no idea what they're doing or they're getting themselves
Yeah.
into. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I would like to start doing is, helping other people with, especially LSD, because I've had so much, healing benefit from it. So I
Uh-huh.
would like to help other people with it. But as you were saying, like I have no certification. Sorry,
Uh-huh.
it's a long word. And I have been looking into, it's called psychedelic school, and they're starting right away, but it's kind of
Yeah.
expensive. So I'm kind of on the fence about it, but it would be good, especially if I want to get into that sort of thing. How do you
Yeah.
feel about schools like that this early?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different training programs that I've seen out there that are coming up, so you can kind of look around. And like I said, I haven't been through any of them. I saw one that I almost joined because then like even one of the medicine carriers that I used to sit in ceremony with was going to be one of their guest speakers who I know has sat with the medicine like over 1,000 times and stuff like this. So I mean, I'm sure there would be some valuable material in a course like that, but just it's like putting it on top of like the experience you already have with it
Hmm.
is going to make somebody a lot more prepared to be able to do, to really serve people and help them because of your own experience of navigating those territories and things like this. And then also, I would say, yeah, if you can get like, there's even on Udemy and stuff, there's really great, cheap hypnotherapy and neuro linguistic programming courses. But
Okay.
just getting a little study of that on top, it gives you just really so many tools for being able to communicate more and listen more and be more present with people just to show up and be a
Okay.
helper. Yeah, because really, like the most profound techniques in all these different systems, like say the mystical sciences from India, the yoga sciences, or shamanic practices, or hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming, really the most like powerful and profound techniques are actually like the simplest and most basic. They're like just about really becoming alert and present and listening, setting aside our own projections and ideas of how they should be or life should be so that we can be more present with them to listen and come into their world more and stuff like this. So yeah, they're all really just like basic human skills that we all have, but becoming more aware of them and really honing in on those so that just really magical things can happen and just like a simple conversation of just being really present with someone and there for them like maybe no one ever has before just because we've gotten so busy in our lives and caught up in whatever our schedule and activities are that we tend to barely be present for other people even when we think we are because of all the our own projections of reality, our map of reality and ideas of how life should be or
Right. You're always
things
kind of trying
mean.
to relate it to your own
Yeah,
life, sort of thing, when you should be
yeah,
focusing on them instead of bringing it back to you. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really a magical game, this life.
Yeah. So, do you use the hypnotherapy with people who have used the psychedelics that you're trying to integrate?
Yeah. And then it's also been helpful for me, even just like kind of tying things together and integrating these kinds of experiences from all the different kinds of practices and things that I've done where I would also have really high experiences just from meditation or mantra, like being in India for months and just not talking to people much and chanting mantras all day long and fasting and all these kinds of practices get real high even for like days on end and all these medicine experiences. But then there seems to be like these problems of daily life still that we get stuck in that kind of bring us down. And then sometimes we have the doubts about all these experiences because we're like, oh, I'm still seem to be stuck. So in a
Right.
way, it's helped me to then understand how to integrate this and apply it more in life, and also just getting another further in-depth understanding of the way that our mind functions. So that basically, the logical thinking mind with thoughts and logic is just like the tip of the iceberg, maybe 5% of our mental capacity. And then underneath that, we have like imagination, this language of symbols and images, so that even what we think is logical is first imagined. We picture it or line it up or however our imagination works. We imagine it as logical. We make all the connections and things like this. Plus, there's the symbolic meaning of each word situation that fits into this imagination. So then, like say in hypnosis and things like this, we use the imagination for really powerful changes. Take even, for example, there's a neurolinguistic programming technique, which is submodalities, where you shift just features about the image. So if we have particular foods, a food that we like and a food that we don't like, we can draw up the images of these foods that come to our mind just naturally, and there'll be certain like coloring or distance, the contrast of the image, all these kinds of things, and there'll be the certain contrast and coloring and the distance of the image for something that we like. So
Okay.
if we were to change those around to match each other, we can make the one that we like match the features of the ones that we don't like. And just by tweaking this image in our mind, it will literally affect the way that we relate to it as a conscious mind in our daily reality. So we could take something, a food that we crave that isn't necessarily good for us, and then take it, the internal image in our imagination and make it match just like the coloring, the distance, the contrast of a food that we didn't like. And then naturally all of a sudden we would be completely repulsed to that
Hmm.
food. Yeah. So this is like how powerful the images in our mind, our imagination is really like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
My girlfriend and I took a trip to go see some friends here over New Year's. And on our way back, she was asking me a question about, she's like reading this thing, picture a field and then picture like a landscape and what's the sky like and there's a horse, where is it, and
Uh-huh.
and there's a cube and how big is it and where is it, and then there's a ladder, where is that ladder, sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
And in the end it sort of, and then there's a storm rolling in and stuff, or you're supposed to picture a storm and where it is and all that sort of stuff, and
Uh-huh.
it's supposed to kind of get an idea of your place, where you are in your mind, whether you're depressed or not, if it's storming all the time or if it's
Uh-huh.
nice and clear and stuff. And it's just interesting that that was brought up just a couple days ago. And then, now we're talking about it, and kind of almost a synchronicity in a way too.
Yeah. And it's like it's so powerful then that yeah, someone could go in to a thing and we could evoke a landscape, an inner landscape like this, and the symbols that come though, like the way I'm trained it is that it's really to be present and listen with someone and to understand then what's going to be the best thing for them, rather than like trying to put our fish in their pond, so to speak, and create images in their mind.
Right.
So then to draw out, yeah, an internal landscape, and then we can find symbols in there that would be healing and meaningful, or symbols that represent a problem, and then find the way to clean it up. You can have like a landscape like that, and the storm and clouds can come in that represent all the negative feelings, the feelings of being stuck or some depression or anxiety or worry or whatever, and really like picturing the clouds and the imagery just like how it feels.
Mhm.
And then there's like a little meditation, you jump up above the clouds, and there's the sun always still above the clouds, and so you feel the warmth of the sun, and then you
Okay.
just breathe, and as you breathe the clouds begin to disperse and break up. And this kind of imagery, because the imagery is even evoked by the feelings, they cannot help but shift and change in some way when we do an imagery like this with our imagination and just breathe like that, which is an interesting thing because consciously, with the logical thinking mind, we can struggle in any way, to try and just create an emotional state. But just with the images like that, you can create it almost instantaneously.
Right. So when you're talking about like the food that you like and the food that you don't like, when you're picturing the food that you don't like, it's probably more of a dull color and not, and then the other one is brighter and,
It kind of
looks
depends.
better, or
It would depend on individuals. There will tend to be like
okay.
key drivers in the submodalities. So like modalities are basically your five senses. The submodalities are like subcategories within those senses. So then say for visual, you would have like brightness, contrast, how close is it, how far is it? But there could
Okay.
also be sounds associated with it. And actually people's internal representation of a different thing, say like a food or something, it may not be an image of that food for them. It may or may not be. It could be actually just like a color or a weird symbol or something like this, that the unconscious mind, the deeper intelligence associates with that food or that image or that activity or subject or whatever. So yeah, it'll be like within the subcategories of the sensory information around the image as it's stored inside as like a map of that external thing.
Oh, okay. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, deeper than what I was thinking. A
It
lot
is
deeper.
and it isn't. It's like what you're saying to an extent, but it can be totally custom to each person. So for some people it might just be like duller or brighter. For some people it might be closer or further away. The visual modalities tend to be really strong because that we tend to be visually predominant in this age.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, you had some 5-MeO experiences you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I was definitely I enjoy talking about the toad medicine and 5-MeO DMT because essentially I feel like this medicine does have the greatest potential for like consistent therapeutic use and entheogenic use too, as far as like say the guy who had written the tryptamines that I love and phenylamines that I love books had been going through research of all these different psychedelics, just basically looking for the one that consistently produced this transcendent experience because that you could get it from all these different medicines kind of randomly, but it was so based on internal conditions and the environment and just so many factors that it seemed impossible to completely predict. But 5-MeO DMT, the toad medicine, seems to have this pretty consistent track record of people having this transcendental experience with the dissolution of the ego first, depending on how much is invested in the ego identity, this individual mind, and the mask that we wear, and any traumas that might be in there. There's a passing through this ego and like a purging, a throwing off of it. But that first stage tends to happen really fast, depending on where you are with the medicine or your own life and the stories and relationship to the medicine and um for some people, if they're more caught in it, then they could get caught for a whole session or ceremony, potentially, where it's just cleaning it out and they'll feel lighter afterwards, but they don't necessarily experience the transcendent breakthrough yet. But for most people, it's like it blasts so quickly through the ego that it's just dissolved and the world is dissolved, and we're sent into this transcendental communion where even like atheists experience divinity, but as like a oneness with an absolute essence of all life as one. And so for me, in my own personal experience, it was like, I had done all this medicine work in my past, even since um, like 10 years ago was when I went through a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies just in that 1 year. And I've been through all these practices with yoga and meditation and stuff like this. So I had all so many different tools. But then recently I was traveling in India with my family, my wife and son, and we had been there for about a year and got to Nepal, and there was some drama between us. And I had basically actually my own fault had told her that my wife, and to take my son and go back to her family in Japan. She's from Japan,
Okay.
and so, like, I basically made her call her mother. I called her mother for her, handed her the phone, was like, you go back to your family because not welcome here, blah, blah, blah. We're not getting along. So, right after that, of course, I changed my mind. That wasn't what I really wanted. And I became like horribly depressed for the time after that. I was still in India for 6 months after they left, and we weren't really talking much, so I just used that as part of my story too, like, oh, they don't even check on me or care about me here in India and all this, I'm just wandering alone. And I was doing these incredible sadhana practices too in Tamil Nadu, South India. There's Arunachala mountain, which is a famous mountain that's supposed to be like a living Shiva, where Ramana Maharishi, the great sage, had lived too. And the mountain is said to be able to awaken one like Ramana Maharishi was, even that it gives people it contains within it the resonance or like the transmission of self-realization and yoga knowledge beyond words or what could be taught in words even. And I was walking around this mountain at least once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, which it's 14 kilometers around, and it's a powerful energy. But it's like at a
Yeah.
certain way, I was like getting these benefits from the sadhana, but at a certain way, I kept coming back, and my mind was just like stuck in this like desolate place, basically. And in March, I came back here to the United States. I was still like stuck in this, and during this time too, I had started training again in hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming. I got really deep into studying all these courses again, starting while I was back in India. But like still, I kept just coming back and feeling so stuck in this place where for me, I feel like it's almost the worst kind of sickness that people can get in this life is where when you feel like you give up or you just have completely failed and the life feels kind of broken inside because we have all the potential for any challenge and the super intelligence of nature contained within our life force. It's directly connected. But then when we feel like cut off and like this death urge is almost there, like you almost feel like life isn't worth it because there's failure, even if there's not suicidal thoughts, but just like this feeling of like hitting rock bottom and that there's no hope in life almost, that there's no energy to meet any challenges or to do anything because it just feels like it's already been failed.
Right.
And so then at this time, I was like, the toad medicine is going to be the thing because it's so strong. It's like the crown of medicines and it makes you blast through all of this. So I started again to work more deeply with the toad medicine at this time. And it was like almost instantaneous. Like it just blasted all this stuff off. And I was just like so much lighter again, like all this nonsense I've been carrying. But because of the way that the toad medicine like connects us directly into that super intelligence of life, it seems to be that it takes to such a high level and connects to that absolute essence of love and all life is one beyond even like archetypes and deities and things like this, that it creates this natural re-imprinting. So it's like we come back down in and feel this connection with the earth. We feel our life is this absolute force and connection with all of the rest of life, and everything is okay because it all fits together in that. Even the darkest of our experiences have only just been part of that contrast of life and the wisdom of all life as one being experiencing in this infinity of forms even. So yeah, with that and the experience of how healing that the toad medicine was for me and bringing all these things together and also helping me to integrate in a way because of the way that it brings you way up, it blasts you out, but then it brings you back down in a way where the earth reflects this infinity. So you can feel it in the earth. You can feel yourself ground into the earth and your kind of natural expression of this infinity of life, which comes through all of us, like all of our lives are this natural expression of the super intelligence of the whole of life. And the toad medicine reconnects us and brings us back in so that as we're coming in, there's still this open space to like the cosmos, and yet there's the feeling of the earth as this living presence, this wholeness too, as all the life of earth as one, reflecting that infinity, grounding it, being the art of the expression, and each of our lives being a very important and unique part of the expression of that infinity. So I feel like there's the repurposing too. People can come back and really feel like, what is my purpose in this life? What am I really doing and where am I going? But in a relaxed fashion too, where it's like when we really know who we are, we know our purpose and where we're going and what we're doing, all the energies line up. The super intelligence of the energy lines up through our life force. Our life force supports what we're doing. Our passion supports what we're doing. So even if we're facing the greatest of challenges, it almost seems easier because we have all of this energy and drive and passion and positivity to meet those challenges, and we know what we're doing, we know what we're going where we're going. When there's that disconnect from nature, from ourselves, then there's like this, it can seem like the easiest task is insurmountable. It's just too hard. Even the simplest of things, like when we're in that kind of a down state, where then like the simplest task of life seems so hard because it doesn't seem to make sense or fit anymore. It seems worthless. But then that intelligence, that level of intelligence, which I feel like is the real message of the toad medicine too, because it's within us all the time. It's a truth that is part of who we are, and it just helps us to reconnect and remember this, that yeah, that life can be natural and powerful and easy, even when it's challenging and hard, if we just know who we are, where we're going, what our purpose is, what it means to be human and part of humanity and things like this.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, problems frustrate us, like we run into the same problem over and over and we get frustrated and stuff. But I mean, it just takes that shift to think of problems as like, kind of fun, or, just something you have to overcome once, and then you know how to do it, and then you won't exactly run into that problem anymore. I don't know what you were saying. I felt a lot of it with my LSD trip, like just that interconnection with everything. And, you know, I'm really interested in that like feeling of coming back into the body. Like I did 5 drops of LSD a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
and yeah, I felt like coming back into my body, and I was like, oh, who's this guy again, sort of thing. But it's like, oh, maybe he's not that bad, sort of thing. But I just remember like just being nothing, but everything at the same time, and then all of a
Uh-huh.
sudden, just like things started reminding me of myself, and then I just slowly kind of came back into my body, and I kind of laughed at myself just because it was kind of goofy to think, oh, this fucking guy again. But it was a cool
Yeah.
experience. um
Yeah.
yeah, that interconnectedness is really important, just to stop being so focused on these small problems that we have, and
Hmm.
just like open yourself up, take a step back, and be like, okay, I've been doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. I just have to like take another look, from this angle, and maybe I can figure it out or something. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's super interesting. Have you tried NNDMT? Like just the from
Yeah.
plants, I guess.
I had, the first time I had was like after like 9, 10 years ago, after I had been doing all these ayahuasca ceremonies, and then we went to India for like 7.5, 8 months and did all these intensive practices there. It also brought some of the medicines, peyote and ayahuasca and stuff with us for our
Okay.
practices there. And then I just came back. So I was like, my mind was already like so open and out there. And this woman had come into town who would serve like chaga ceremonies.
Okay.
Um, and so yeah, I like had that was the first time I had smoked it. And it's interesting because when you were talking, it reminded me of this experience because I was blasted so far out there, and I would like remember wanting to come back and being begging to come back somehow, like his ego is coming back. And there's also like this perception of being like God and the love of God flowing through me and seeing this responsibility. But the ego was like all mixed in there too. And it was like, oh no, like I can't handle this responsibility and everything. And
Yeah.
I was like, put me back down, put me back down. I've said that in some ayahuasca ceremonies too, where I was just really up there. And I'm like, put me down, put me down, put me back down. And I was like, I want to be back in this body. And I was like, the stupid me. I want to be back in the stupid me, the stupid body.
Nice.
So yeah, I was actually kind of almost begging to be stupid again.
That's super cool. How did the two, um, I guess, relate? Like, I've heard that NN is, or I guess that 5-MeO is quite a bit stronger, mentally, anyway.
So the way I like to look at them is that because these two, the NN-DMT and 5-MeO-DMT, they're both neurotransmitters.
Okay.
So neurotransmitters they're actually created by our own minds and bodies, as well as many other organic beings in nature and stuff like this. That's why you can find them in many plants. But they're neurotransmitters that are released in our brains and bodies, whether we take them as an external source or not, when we enter into these same mystical states of awareness. So they are like biochemicals that are completely tied into this kind of level of intelligence of communion with the nature or the universe in a certain way. So then DMT is like the neurotransmitter of the sixth sense and opening into inner vision in the astral realm, that then one can have all levels of experience within that realm, which include how people would talk about the DMT elves or gnomes, and also angels, angelic beings, and deities, Buddhas, really just like any kind of being or phenomena of the astral realm. And also, it's not like it's limited to that, but it opens up this sixth sense, so to say. It's like the neurotransmitter of the sixth sense. And then 5-MeO DMT would be like the neurotransmitter of the crown, where it literally opens up then this experience of transcending ego identity or a separate identity, and uh, into the territory of a complete communion beyond even like duality of archetypes. So then, for example, more frequently in the sixth sense realm, people will have an experience of a duality to some extent still. So there could be like the the visions that I'm having and me having the visions, or the experience of an observer or witness of these visions. Whereas when you go through the neurotransmitter of the crown, it's like it takes off that separateness of the observer and the observed, and there's like only this oneness of the vision. But so then it's not like if you only took ayahuasca or DMT medicine that it limits it to this realm of the sixth sense, because it opens up either way, and it's not even required the medicine for this ability or this awareness to actually be there. It's always there. It's just like we put on the filters, and so the medicine helps us to open up, because it is literally for these ones, DMT and 5-MeO DMT, they have their own receptors in the brain and the body. They are like our own neurotransmitters that we would create naturally, even if we were to enter into those same states through pranayama, breath work, or a spontaneous mystical experience from prayer, or any number of things, just some random event that was just the perfect event for that person that triggered this release in the
Right.
brain. And then there'd be these experiences. So it could still, just like you said, with the LSD or other medicines, I've also had like these kinds of oneness experiences. So it's kind of different with 5-MeO DMT. And most of my experience then has been with the toad,
Okay.
with the 5-MeO DMT. So the toad has its own features too, because there's other alkaloids. It's really like a cocktail of all these different alkaloids unique to the toad. And people say it's a little rougher on the body in some ways than the 5-MeO DMT. Like they say, if they were to take straight a pure extracted 5-MeO DMT or synthetic 5-MeO DMT, which I would prefer, like from nature, the plant extracted or the toad. But they say the straight extracted 5-MeO DMT is more like an elevator just going up really fast, blasting you out, and it's real clean. Whereas other people have said that toad then is kind of like the elevator is rubbing against the sides a little bit. But my
Okay.
experience actually with it is that the way the toad works in the body like this is how it kind of in some ways helps to integrate the medicine into the body, and it actually like can purge the body. It's not quite traditionally like a purgative or medicine like ayahuasca, but it can purge you as it goes through the ego like that, and this feeling of like the intensity in the body. So yeah, there's just like this this intensity, this certain level of intensity that accompanies the toad and 5-MeO DMT that just doesn't feel the same as anything else.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
and that's
makes
why
sense.
maybe people think that it's the most powerful, but it's just kind of the mechanism of how it's working that it just has this feeling of intensity. Like,
Right. Yeah, I've noticed with an NDMT, I've had like really pure like white powder, and then I've
uh-huh,
had I guess he called it like Jim Jam or Jungle Spice or whatever, and it's like
uh-huh,
more of a yellow and almost like a butter almost, like it's like
uh-huh,
crumbly and I actually really like that yellow stuff because it
uh-huh.
had like some of those other alkaloids like you're saying, and yeah, it just kind of I always saw entities on it. Like
Oh yeah,
with this other stuff, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just like landscapes and stuff. But like with that other
uh-huh.
stuff, it was like a guaranteed meeting with the entities. It was really cool,
Yeah,
and it tasted good too in a weird way. Like
huh.
I'm starting to like the taste of DMT actually. Kind
Yeah, it kind of
of.
grows on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had this jungle spice that's like from mimosa. That's like it'll be a reddish color or a brownish color,
Okay.
depending on like what how the mimosa was, what kind or where in the world it came from and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, it's similar because also like yeah, the mimosa jungle spice it has some other alkaloids in it that are unique to mimosa. And so yeah, it has a very different feel that I also enjoy that because it's like you have more of this feeling of the spirits of the plant
Yeah.
involved, and that's why I like the natural medicines like plant extracted and stuff like this. You know, if it came started from some natural source, it's like the spirit of these plants are also helping. You know.
Right. So is it a little more visual or like how visual is 5-MeO? I've heard that it's a little bit less so than NN, but stronger in the mental.
Yeah, it's like it depends really because the way that the medicine works, it tends to direct inwards into this internal experience that kind of absorbs you beyond visual kind of conception or imagery of life to a more abstract kind of position.
Okay.
So while even visuals may be occurring, so say like if depending on the level of the dosage, if you hadn't taken enough that you're like completely out of the body, there's like there could be like these intense visuals happening, but it's almost like you don't pay attention to them or notice them as much. Like you look outside kind of and see like, whoa, the world is going funky, but the experience is so inner drawn that you tend to just like close and then the internal visuals are like different is like it's there but it's like the same as like you don't pay attention or don't even really quite want to pay attention to it outside. It's like your
Okay.
awareness is just drawn more into this subtle region. But so then, yeah, if you do catch the visuals with them, it's going to be more in the before and the after that, like as you're launching up and then
Oh,
coming
okay.
back. So then, like one of the other partners that I would do ceremony, the toad ceremony with sometimes, he'd say that like he would take the hit and then I would be doing like some sort of chants or different sounds and stuff, holding the space, and he'd say that he'd see me go like, like the whole world would be like, and then it would be gone. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I had a buddy over and we were smoking the changa,
Hmm.
and I took we were smoking in a bong and I took the bong rip and then handed it over and I laid back and I was pretty gone, and then I just heard him like he smoked and then I heard him say, "Your plants are talking to me." And I like opened my eyes. I was like, "What?" And there's like a plant on our coffee table, and he's just like sitting there looking at it. And I
Uh-huh.
guess it was like talking to him or whatever. And I just kind of busted out laughing. And yeah, I love that stuff. Like it's so interesting and like different every time and
Yeah.
just mind opening, like all the plants feel like they have an entity, within them and
Oh
like a
yeah.
life force. And it's really amazing. It really is.
It is. Yeah. It's that opportunity is there's reconnection because that's why I like to feel that like these two neurotransmitters, it would be impossible for someone to say that they're actually illegal because they are manufactured in our bodies. It said when we enter into these same moods. So it's like, are we outlawing these moods? Are we illegal walking around because if we enter into these moods, our bodies are manufacturing it internally, or
Yeah.
is it like life, liberty, and happiness? These kinds of moods which actually connect us to life, which give us that feeling of what liberty really means, and happiness and stuff like this. Are
Hmm.
they outlawed? I don't think it could be possible. So I feel like that there's some mistake somewhere, or there's just like
Yeah.
people don't know better, but these are medicines.
Hmm. Yeah, they're here for a reason, like they're here to connect us again. I feel like there's sort of like you're saying, like there's different ways of doing it, like meditation or yoga or
Hmm.
chanting or whatever, or
Yeah,
hypnosis or.
yeah,
But I feel like psychedelics are that cheat code. If you smoke DMT, you're gonna get up there.
yeah.
Maybe not like you have to have the intention and everything along with it, but it feels like it's really like for me, I can't really meditate and get to that, spot, but
Uh-huh.
I can really like when I'm on LSD and I start meditating, it's just like I'm just gone, and I'm just
Yeah.
floating. So I feel like it's really helpful in that sense.
Mhm.
Um, do you do LSD or mushrooms often?
Um, LSD I have done before. It's not, I haven't done in, mm, well, actually, yeah, somebody had dropped some on me like within the last year, kind of unexpected.
Okay.
So that happened, but other than that, it had probably been like, yeah, over 10 years or something like that. And like I've had good experiences with it too,
Yeah.
this feeling of connection, but I always felt like for me personally with LSD that it was like it would throw power into my system and just open up, like these filters would be taken off, but I felt like it didn't have the same kind of guidance and like the nature, the kind of intelligence of the spirits inside. It's not like that's separate from nature either, because really like everything we see with our eyes is nature. Like everything that's seen
Hmm.
within consciousness is nature. It's energy, this movement of energy, and everything that modern scientists do, that man do, is working with this energy, with matter, with different elements, even however they manipulate and make weird chemicals. It's all the same nature essentially. So that intelligence of nature is in everything. It's reflected in everything. But there's like this like another intelligence, like almost like these little entities or spirits inside of like the mushrooms or ayahuasca, the different DMT plant sources like this, that I feel like would help more. So I've done a lot more work with these kinds of medicines, with mushrooms and
Okay.
ayahuasca and stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mostly like it because, like you were saying, it sort of like releases those filters. And I
Hmm.
have some like injuries to my ear and my jaw and, like
Uh-huh.
tight muscles and stuff. And I feel like it really helps to release those and just like, send energy in and sort of send, I don't know, like more flow through everything. Because it
Yeah.
feels like, I hit my head and, uh, you know, I don't know if I don't know, wreck some of the muscles somehow. I don't know if I tore them and like smushed them into the bone or something, but I've been like learning how to like
Uh-huh.
reactivate them and bring them back together and stuff. And it LSD so far has been most helpful with that.
Hmm.
I feel like mushrooms is more so in my mind and stuff,
Uh-huh.
less so like actually with my outward senses.
Uh-huh.
Um, I haven't tried ayahuasca or peyote yet. I really want to. DMT actually really helped with, I actually saw my jaw like open up like this. I don't know if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
And then I saw like part of my ear, it like scraped out like damaged parts and then like
Uh-huh.
rewired around these like, I don't know, this weird loop thing. And then
Yeah.
my girlfriend was showing me pictures of this she borrowed a book about like our human anatomy and she showed me a picture of like the jaw and like the ear and everything and I was like that's what I saw, like it was like this weird like loop around and it was like I saw that, that's like super cool.
Yeah.
um and yeah, like it just it almost seems like a microscope in there sometimes. um But I don't know. Are you busy here? We have 5 more minutes till it's about an hour.
Yeah, I had moved, I got my client able to be moved to 12:30, so I have a little bit more time if you like.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can always do another episode, like I said, but
Okay.
um, I'm interested in hearing some of the experiences with, like, if you have any standout experiences on ayahuasca or peyote. I've never done either one of them, so I'm really interested in those. Or the 5-MeO, since we are already talking about those. Um, Up to
Yeah,
you.
it's like, yeah, I'm not even necessarily getting a particular time to share. I mean, I guess there's one is coming to mind with the toad medicine recently where even there was like a feeling of collective purging, even just because then how I put myself where I am in my life with my own particular purpose or the way that I show up in life, I like to feel like I'm in service to humanity and the community and stuff. I've been walking in these different shamanic pathways and prayer pathways and stuff like this. So it's like when we pray for all of ourself, all of humanity, all of nature, of which we're a whole.
Right.
So recently I had a ceremony even with all of this drama that's been going on in the world, just like all the different kinds of noise in the news and stories that people have been concerned about and stuff like this, and a collective purging with the toad medicine where the like as soon as I hit the medicine, it was just like ooh, and I wasn't expecting it either. I think actually I had already just had a hit, and that was like a really good experience pretty much. Right? I had just gone up and come back down and was integrating, and then my friend that I was doing the ceremony with that day had his hit and was coming back down, and then I like took a second one, a bigger one, because it's like, all right, let's go, like, and then immediately just started purging out this stuff, and it was the feeling of a collective purging, even a cleaning for all of us. So that's something that I feel too, is that when we do these medicines, when we become well for ourselves, whether we're aware of it or not, we are helping the whole of nature is feeling that wellness in a way, you know. And so I purge like this, and then it may sound a little strange to people who wouldn't have had an experience like this, but then I was looking at it and seeing like this collective darkness in this purge, and I was like praying over it and doing like this healing work and talking to this collective consciousness of humanity even, and as it was like getting all, it was like shrinking up and changing color and getting all dark with this, all these stories and the corona and the Black Lives Matter and just like all these dramas that were causing all these tensions around people and people, the politics, everything, you know. And as I was talking to it, just holding this space of love, just really holding this space of love, that that's who we are, the life force, which can flow naturally from that connection of the highest levels of super intelligence, like the ultimate source of life directly within us, connected through just holding this space of love. I saw it transform and become lighter again, like it expanded back out, it became lighter, and it's like this darkness was released in a way. So it could sound strange to somebody because it's like this whole like trip of collective purging and cleansing, but the message of it really, like this toad medicine message, that we are connected to the highest levels of intelligence, the super intelligence of all of nature as a whole, of which we're a part. Like this body grows on its own. None of us consciously thought of or knew how to grow this human body. It's grown by the design of nature, with the super intelligence of nature. It is nature itself. It's connected directly to the whole of humanity. Humanity, a part of nature, connected to the whole of nature. So the more that we just be ourselves, really, that we be really willing to drop the masks and just be human and be ourselves and connect deeper and deeper into our humanity and the life force, the source of the force of life, that this super intelligence can flow through and express itself in our lives in like the most profound and amazing magical ways that we can't even really limit with our rational thinking mind. And I feel like too that this is where humanity is going as a collective, that we're awakening, and that's why the medicines too are coming out more and more, and that they are like a critical part for this time, because like you said, so many people, it could be hard to sit and do some kind of meditation or disciplined practices, but the medicines like this make it for an undeniable profound experience that
Mhm.
you just can't ignore really.
Yeah. And yeah, those bad trips, I feel, for the most part, are like, somebody not willing to integrate it or try to integrate it, or, just, it takes a lot of work, and you have to like see that and be willing to accept that, I'm seeing a part of me that I don't like, and that I have to
Yeah,
change, and, or, do something with it to alter it so that, you can look yourself in the mirror when you're tripping and it's not scary,
yeah,
because I hear a lot of people say that looking in the mirror is hard, but I don't know. I kind of like looking in the mirror and like,
yeah,
just seeing what I see and how I see myself and how I can, observe myself in a different way. Maybe.
yeah. And
Um,
like how you said earlier, how like the problem, because it was a perfect metaphor, even how you said that, because it's how we work with in hypnosis, this kind of model, and neuroscience too, that essentially when we're in a problem, there's like state dependent learning, or what we could call like rooms of the mind, where there are little pockets of neurology, neural networks. And when we're then in like a problem, we're in the particular neural network of associated with the problem. And we will have all the resources, most likely, in most cases, we have all the resources we need to solve that problem in another part of our experience or neurology and our wisdom or awareness, but it seems to be isolated in that pocket. They'll grow like myelin insulation, which helps to keep the energy in the neural network so it fires more efficiently with less energy, and it creates like a pocket. So you're like in the room of the mind. But as soon as you can expand awareness beyond everything that we're thinking about when we're in the problem state, then we can see it from another angle and be in the resources where the resources are.
mhm,
So it's just a matter of, yeah, being able to like be willing to shift out of the state, to bounce out of it, to consider what else haven't we considered about it. So yeah, essentially like resistance, like there's the saying, what you resist will persist, what you accept, you gain the power to transform. So
okay.
it's like in the resistance of it, we are feeding the problem in a way. We're like, I don't want this. I want to get out. I'm stuck in the problem, you know? But it's like
Yeah.
if we could just consider everything other than what we're focusing on or thinking about, then we've expanded into infinite possibilities where there's guaranteed to be the solution or the other angle or the lesson that we haven't
Mhm.
considered yet.
Yeah. It's kind of like you figure out, like you're faced with the problem, and then you sort of like half figure it out, and then your brain's like, okay, we figured it out. And like, then it just keeps doing that thing next time that the problem comes. And, and it sort of does it, it like gets you out of bed in the morning or whatever, but it doesn't like fix that problem to make you happy, you know? And kind of forgot where I was going with this. Uh, yeah, and it's just about changing that equation, like you want, if happiness is a 10 and your problem is a 5 or something, and you're just adding 3 to it and only getting an 8, that's not happiness. But if you change how deal with it, and you do a 5 instead of a 3, and then 5 plus 5 equals 10, just like figuring out how to change that equation to make it work, and
Yeah,
equal what you want it to equal, because it's
yeah,
not when you're constantly being faced with that same problem. It's a cycle, and you have to learn how to break the cycle, and
yeah,
learn from those mistakes, because if it keeps coming up, then there are mistakes still being made, so
yeah. Well, as
I
far
feel
as
like
like if we're getting undesired results, essentially, yeah, and we keep getting the same undesired results, and yeah, we got to change the equation somehow.
mhm.
Otherwise, the same equation is going to get the same results.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just that's how I've sort of been like trying to look at problems that I've been having, like
Uh-huh.
nothing really comes to mind right now, but just like, okay, how can I take a step back and do this differently, because
Yeah.
like I'm unhappy in this particular way, or, like with my job, I guess, like I just like, I feel like I'm stuck, but like, okay, you're doing the same thing every year, like when you're laid off in the winter, you're just playing video games or, you're just wasting that time. But like this year, I'm
Uh-huh.
like trying to do the podcast. I'm trying to like, get some schooling or whatever. I'm just trying to like
Uh-huh.
so that I don't have to go back to my job maybe in the summer or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I'm just trying to like change up the equation so that the
Yeah.
results will be different, And I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But
I think you're on the right track for sure. I mean, these are perfect. You have a good mind for sure. Like these kinds of insights like this, they're perfect, you know? It's all about us just using more of our mental capacity and processes and not getting stuck in the same old ways. If we want different results, especially if we need different results, then we gotta have a different equation.
yeah, for sure. For sure. So what was your meeting you have later? Is that hypnotherapy?
Yeah, I've got a client with hip for hypnosis coming up
Cool.
here.
That's cool. What's your like process with that? Like how do you start? Like I don't know. I've never been hypnotized before.
So I guess my process is that I offer like a free 15-minute Zoom meetings where I'll give
Okay.
like a gift, a little hypnotic gift that'll be a tool somebody can use like a to be able to boost their mood at any time or to be able to wake up without an alarm clock or fall
Okay.
asleep easier like when if it's harder to sleep traveling or stuff like that. All these kinds of little short gifts like that that I'll usually give an introduction experience like that in a free 15-minute Zoom meeting. And then as far as like my full sessions, they are really based completely on the each person's unique circumstances and
Okay.
issues. So like at one level of hypnosis, which I would highly encourage if you ever went for hypnosis or did training, if it's all about just using scripts, like if they tell you in the training course that you're going to walk away with all these scripts or something like this, like I would not avoid that training because scripts are basically like cookie cutter methods, you know, and
Right. Yeah.
cutter methods don't work for everyone, you know. So ours is a live one-on-one thing where we start it and take it one step at a time with where is the person now and where do they want to be and then what are the one step at a time that we can help. So there's all different kinds of language patterns. I've learned advanced language patterns where specific questions or ideas will basically spin the mind out or bend the mind out in a different direction around the problem so we can start to stretch out the neurology where it was stuck and it can start to consider it from different angles and views and also
Okay.
gather resources from other parts of the brain and bring them in to that where that problem was to see then how does this resource change it. And then if that wasn't enough, then we go out and gather some more resources and bring it back. And it's like, okay, does that change it? And basically, like even if say for example with like anxiety and depression or fear, like a phobia, if you have a negative state, a negative neurology like this, and you build up enough positive resources and bring that into the same neural network, so the two states fire off at the same time and they're conflicting, the stronger state will win over and collapse the neurology of the other state. So essentially, take like a phobia is like kind of the perfect example where a dog or a snake or something like this would trigger this fear automatically, where just like seeing it without thinking about it, they might pass out or go into like panic already, you know? With the
Right.
same kind of consistency, this new resource would be wired in, where it might be confidence or comfort or whatever was the kind of perfect resource for them that their unconscious mind, deeper intelligence would bring out in that process. And then, yeah, the same consistency when that neural network would fire off, it would go into this new resource that had been brought into the brain, into that
Okay.
neural network. Yeah.
So do you have any interest in, or have you been like using maybe like microdosing mushrooms or something, or having your client do that while you're doing hypnosis, or is there
Um,
anything that you think could be helpful with that?
I have clients that do microdosing on their own because
Okay.
it's getting to be popular, and that's one of the reasons why I started doing psychedelic integration services. Even is because it was just getting so popular with all the articles coming out that people are reading, PTSD, depression, anxiety, whatever. You can just microdose mushrooms, and I was like, it's gonna be better if people had like more guidance or help with that because people are not only microdosing; they tend to be like microdosing and like taking full, like really 3, 4 grams. They've like never done any sort of psychedelic trip before in their life, and they have
Yeah.
PTSD or whatever, and they just read that it's good, you know?
Yeah.
So that's part of why I started doing it was to help and attract clients like that, even that could probably use some assistance if they don't know what they're doing. But yeah, I don't really necessarily just encourage people to do it and stuff right now. Like as far as like just the laws and everything, I'll talk about it and then say, it's my own opinion that these are good things, but I don't necessarily recommend it to someone
Right.
specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing just to, you know, give them the information or whatever if they ask for
Yeah.
it. But
Share information,
yeah,
open sharing of information.
yeah. But do at your own risk, obviously,
Yeah.
it could be bad in the sense of like scary or whatever. And maybe some people aren't able to overcome what they see, in some senses. But I don't know. I think most people could use it, especially like microdosing. But there are people who are allergic to things, and that it'll react poorly with, or that it won't work for. It's just that's the way it goes.
Yeah. It's just basically like because of the legality around it that I'm, covering my own ass as far as like I'm
Mhm.
not saying that I'm telling people to take illicit substances or whatever,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But as I've said, it's my own opinion that things like DMT or 5-MeO DMT, which are neurotransmitters produced by our own like body, that they couldn't be illegal and stuff. So someone can take that information and do whatever fits for them in their
yeah.
life. Yeah,
Y- Yeah, and like the whole point of this podcast is just to share our experiences, not to say go do this drug or go do this drug. It's
yeah,
we're sharing our experiences and just trying to get that out there and
yeah,
get other people to share experiences. Because most of the time you just hear about the bad things, like
uh-huh,
somebody sadly dying or like jumping out a window or
yeah,
having a heart attack on 5-MeO, and there's that happens, but it's rare,
yeah.
and
I'd say
there's
that
like
that would be really rare. It would only get
yeah,
into the news and be emphasized in the news is because of to create a kind of image around these
yeah,
medicines. But
yeah, kind of clickbaity sort of like, but I don't know. It's about telling our story, I guess, and just getting it out there, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
the more people talking about this, discussing these things, considering these ideas, neurotransmitters are also like important biochemicals in our bodies because they are kind of like the mind body connection or the connection between the conscious unconscious mind or the collective intelligence and the natural intelligence mind. So then neurotransmitters are even like every time we blink, that what sends signals to the heart to pump, the breathing, all of these unconscious processes that go on in the body are basically facilitated by neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitter sends the message to blink every time. That's what actually relays that from this deeper intelligence of the unconscious mind, which we can't even define or say what consciousness really is. They still haven't been able to measure it scientifically or define it in neuroscience or anything. So, but neurotransmitters then provide this like biochemical thing that we can measure, which is like an interface between this deeper intelligence and the physiology of the body.
Right. So how exactly do you see the ego? Like I see it as basically what separates you from me, and like what I feel as what separates you from me, you know what I mean? But like what's your idea of the ego?
It's like an instrument, like a fractal reflection, you could say. There's a like pure field of awareness or consciousness. To make it like the simplest, it would be like you have pure awareness, pure consciousness, and you have energy, like the being or awareness, the self, the supreme self, and the power or energy of that self to experience being in infinities of ways. And so then you have just the invisible awareness which cannot be seen. In India, they use the metaphor of like just the same way that the eyeball can't see itself, it just sees. This awareness field is invisible and not the object of perception itself. Everything else that arises within that is a movement of energy and some sort of power of our experience. Something that is perceived, it can be seen. So mind then comes in there, and ego on top of mind. They're like these other kinds of reflections of this package of awareness and energy. And they kind of reflect that. So it's like um, the ego then is like another almost reflection of the self, but a smaller, limited kind of fractal version that sits on top of this pure awareness where we're one field of awareness and energy essentially.
Okay. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Um, yeah. Okay, so I don't know how much longer do you have? Sorry to keep asking this, but
Yeah, I'd
I
probably
could keep
better go
talking all
to
day.
get ready for my next appointment, but we could go ahead and meet again sometime because yeah, I
Yeah.
could keep talking for forever about all these different kinds of things too. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's end it there. And then I'd love to have you on again.
okay.
This is great. Yeah, we'll keep in contact and figure out when another time would be good. So with
Okay.
your hypnotherapy, do you like just do it over Zoom? Like is
Yeah.
there a link I could put in our episode to,
Yeah, I could send you a
direct
link.
people? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be
it's
cool.
mostly all yeah through Zoom nowadays because even locally I haven't been getting a lot of calls so much locally as I have been online, and it just seems like with the current situation people are more into the Zoom
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll put a link in the episode descriptions to, send people to you if they want
Okay.
your services or whatever to talk to you, get your opinion on things, whatever.
Yeah.
If that's cool with you.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on here and sharing your experiences. It was awesome. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks for having me, and I look forward to staying in touch with you, and we'll have a conversation again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Have a good day, man.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.